this is the beginning of part of a scene, making the basic food stall, and all these shapes just extruded, shaped on the vertex level, and signed material. It's important to sign materials as you go along. This way, it's easy to go back, change all the objects of the same group through adjusting the material. This is the first layer, and you can see with the first layer, you just add the basics of whatever set you're building. So basics of the back, layout, these pots on the stove, you're lining up the relation between shapes, some type of uncomfortable balance between this grid of shelves here with the items on it and the weight over here. I should add a little more weight over here to balance things out by making this bigger, and then it might be in an uncomfortable balance. Here it's symmetrical and asymmetrical at the same time. So you're just making the basic shapes, and the concept will be this folding up little food stall where all the seats could go up and down. I would animate this for you. One frame like this took 17 minutes to render. And the reason why it took 17 minutes to render, I clicked on, within the Arnold renderer, enable adaptive sampling to get a better look, and that better look cost me many minutes. There's still many different modeling layers to go through, such as the wire would be the next layer, and running in wires to make points of interest going on, and then adding maybe menus off to the side or other shelving containing the utensils, maybe hooks here for the utensils, and figuring out the set. While you go along, of course, you want to render a sample, see how it's going. And we're going to jump now from Maya into Blender. And the reason for doing this is to compare building in one application, rendering in another, and getting used to a workflow where it doesn't matter where you build and where you output, as long as you're happy and it achieves the goal that you're looking for. So if I start in one place, maybe I want to jump somewhere else. I'm going to select all these objects, and remember, all the objects had assigned a regular blend material as it was built to make life a little easier during exporting and importing into the next application. File, export selection. Type of selection I'm exporting is FBX, and I'm just going to keep in the scenes folder, calling it stall 01, and then just click export selection. Once you launch Blender, click on General, and you can delete this cube. File, import, select FBX, and then click on the FBX that was exported. Now, it might be very tiny. Either use a scroll wheel to zoom on in, zoom on out, or the period key on the numpad if you have a numpad. If not, use the scroll wheel. And to orbit, middle mouse button, shift middle mouse button to pan, and to zoom in and zoom out is the wheelie mouse. You can see that the smooth mesh, which is a preview within Maya, doesn't translate over into the FBX. And this is true when exporting from Maya, going to Unity, Unreal, etc. So in that next application, you either have to smooth it, or within Maya, you apply mesh smooth before exporting. Now, depending upon your workflow, you might just want to use the native way of applying a modifier to smooth things out within the next application. Here, within Blender, I'm going to select this object, and we're going to make everything look smoother, unless you like this blocky looking world. Going off to the modifiers, add modifier, and select subdivision surface. Off in the modifier area for subdivision surface, there's a level in the viewport preview and the rendering as well. Going to click 2, I think 3 is good, and when we get to rendering, 3 will be good as well. We'll render in a moment. To apply this modifier to all the other objects in the scene. Here's a list of the other objects. To do this, I want to copy this modifier everywhere. Let's do this in reverse. And we'll worry about the wall objects, the bowls, and the pots and pans a little later. Selecting all these objects, including this one, shift click on the last one, which is the original one where we're going to be copying the data from. Shift click. Press Control L and select Copy Modifiers. And now they're all inheriting the same smoothness. Isn't that awesome? So to do that with the wall objects, you can see you could do a big marquee selection. You can go into this list and you can find these objects which will be nearby in the list, and you can start selecting them like this, however you want to do it. I'm going to just select them like this, one at a time. If I miss one, no big deal. If you started out in Blender doing this work, then you probably would have had the modifier already on it, already attached, and you would save this step. Sometimes you inherit art from different applications, and sometimes you just want to work in that other application. And I don't want this wall, so I'm going to Shift deselect that wall. I want these. These are obvious ones, right? And even these tiny things back here, these pots and pans, they had the smooth modifier applied. I'm going to select anything that has the smooth modifier applied to it. I could go back to the original one, but after I selected everything to apply the modifier to, shift click on anything that already has that modifier, and then Control L, copy modifiers. And there's our scene. That wasn't so bad, right? Just took a minute. Oops, I forgot one. Like I said, no big deal. Select this lamp, shift click on any object that has the modifier, Control L, copy modifier, and I think that's about all the objects in the scene that need that modifier. Let's take a quick look at rendering. Select the camera, and you could scroll through the list here to select the camera, or you could zoom out. And I'm going to zoom all the way out. There's the camera right there. I want this camera to be a little bit tighter on my shot. So after you select the camera, you select it out in the viewport, or you could just have selected up here in this area that has a list of objects in the scene. Maneuver the viewport the way you like it. I'm pressing the middle mouse button to orbit around, and wheelie mouse to zoom in, shift middle mouse button, and this is where I want to set my camera, maybe a little tighter of a shot, like this. Go to View, Align View, Align Active Camera to View. Click. So here's the bounding frame, and that's all we're going to get. If I want it a little further out, I have two choices. One is to just move the camera. The other one would be just to play the orbiting like I just did, and orbit the view and then align again. Here I'm just going to pull the camera out, pulling it back. To look back through the camera, View, Cameras, Active Camera. And I'll zoom in using the wheelie mouse, even though this is the live area to be rendered. If you press the G key and then middle mouse button, dragging the mouse up and down, you can dolly in and dolly out. Pressing the R key will allow you to roll the camera around. R key and then the middle mouse button. Just click the left mouse button to exit that operation. Press the G key and then X key to move it left and right, or Y key in and out, or Z key to pan up and down. So G key followed by X, Y, and Z. All right, groovy. Now let's take a look at rendering this. Right click, whoops, want a little lower, so G key and Z key just a little bit lower. Let's take a look at our renderers. We're going to use Eevee for quick rendering, and then switching to cycles for high-end rendering. Starting with Eevee first. Go to Render, Render Image. And there's our image. And that was in real time, nothing cut. That's like almost a second later. The next step is start playing with the shaders to get reflections and to go to cycles also to get higher end rendering. Let me go to GPU compute. In the rollover, it says go to preferences to configure the GPU output. Under edit preferences, system, here you can specify which video card to use. I'm going to be using this video card. Now I'm going to render this, render image, and this could be rendered using cycles and the video card. Cycles did a great job. The next step is to play with the materials and get the reflections going. Let me save this. That's the first output. Let's take a look at changing the materials for the metals. Here's metal, here's the metal. Off on the right side, go to material properties, and here's the metal seat. And as I click on items, you can see the different swatches. I'm going to decrease the roughness. Decreasing the roughness will make the material reflect more and increase the metalness. And that happened on everything with metal seat. Let me do the same for the pot. Decrease the roughness. Increase the metalness. And I'm going to hit render and see what happens. Render, render image. That little change to this metal and this metal, you can see it's really coming to life right here. Right? You can see the fun reflections going on. Maybe a little too much fun reflections. To dial it back a little bit, let's look at the pot right back here. With the pot material selected, I'm going to increase the roughness. And the roughness is like taking sandpaper to the surface, making it look a little duller. It's still very metallic looking, but lots of roughness on it. Go back to render, render image. Great, that's a lot better. It's reflecting the colors and shapes of the environment, but it's not as shiny as this chrome. From here, you just keep on going through the materials and just adjusting them, followed by adding lights to the scene.